In June 2019, at the Paris Air Show, Airbus announced a new version of its A321 narrow-body jet, a single-aisle aircraft designed to carry 180 passengers on routes up to 4,700 nautical miles. Airlines ordered 1,100 of them before the first one flew. That is the largest launch order backlog in commercial aviation history for an aircraft still in development. Boeing's 787 Dreamliner program, the jet specifically designed to open the world to long-haul point-to-point flying, received 47 new orders that same year. The A321XLR did not compete with existing narrow-bodies. It quietly entered Boeing's wide-body market from the bottom up at a fraction of the operating cost, and almost no one in commercial aviation was prepared for what that meant. The Airbus A320 family has been the backbone of short-haul commercial aviation since 1988. For 30 years, the rule in airline economics was simple. If you needed to fly more than 4 hours, you needed a wide body. The A320, the A319, the A321, all regional workhorses, capable for routes under 2,000 nautical miles, nothing more. The A321neo, introduced in 2017, pushed that ceiling. New CFM LEAP engines and revised aerodynamics stretched its range to approximately 3,500 nautical miles, enough to cross the Atlantic, barely under ideal conditions. Airlines used it for transatlantic routes only in summer, with tailwinds on thin city pairs where a wide-body couldn't justify the seat count. Airbus began studying which routes airlines wanted to open, but couldn't. Not the routes that existed, but the routes that were commercially viable if only the right aircraft existed to serve them. The findings were specific: New York to Warsaw, London to Riyadh, Rome to Washington, Tokyo to Singapore. Routes that required wide-body economics to justify but wide-body costs to execute. And the math never worked. The A321XLR was engineered to make the math work. The critical modification was a rear center tank, a structural fuel tank integrated into the rear fuselage behind the wing box, adding approximately 12,900 pounds of additional fuel capacity without compromising the cabin. Combined with a revised undercarriage, aerodynamic refinements, and an increased maximum takeoff weight of 101 tons, the A321XLR can now fly 4,700 nautical miles with 180 passengers and a full payload. That is New York to Warsaw, nonstop, on a single-aisle jet. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The A321XLR is not just more efficient than the aircraft it replaces on short-haul routes. It is more efficient than the aircraft it displaced on long-haul routes, the wide-body jets those routes previously required. The Boeing 787-8 burns approximately 5.8 liters of fuel per 100 passenger kilometers. The A321XLR burns approximately 2.0 liters on equivalent routes. The 787 carries 242 passengers in a standard two-class configuration. The A321XLR carries 180. On a route like London to Riyadh, roughly 3,100 nautical miles. The 787 costs significantly more per seat to operate, requires wide-body ground handling infrastructure, and needs enough passengers to fill 242 seats before the flight breaks even. On that same route, the A321XLR operates twice daily at 180 seats, filling at higher load factors because the demand is distributed across smaller, more frequent departures. Airlines call this right-sizing. But here is where it gets strange. Right-sizing is not a neutral term. It describes a fundamental shift in how commercial aviation is organized. The wide-body business model was built around hub and spoke, concentrate passengers from regional airports into a hub, aggregate them onto large wide-body aircraft, fly the aggregated demand across the ocean, then disaggregate on the other side. The economics of wide-bodies depended on hubs, and hubs depended on wide-bodies being the only aircraft capable of justifying transatlantic frequency. The A321XLR doesn't need a hub. It can fly point-to-point between cities that were previously too small to anchor a wide-body route. And when airlines operate point-to-point, they find that passengers prefer it, consistently choosing nonstop service over a hub connection at roughly a 30% fare premium. The wide-body wasn't just a technical choice, It was an economic architecture, and the A321XLR quietly made it optional. ITA Airways, formerly Alitalia, ordered 28 A321XLRs and began replacing its A330 fleet on medium-haul transatlantic routes. Iberia converted A330 slots directly to A321XLR. Finnair canceled widebody options. Air France committed to 30 aircraft for routes that previously operated 767s and A330s. By 2024, the A321XLR backlog stood at approximately 1,200 aircraft across 55 airlines. Qantas placed orders for thin Pacific routes it couldn't previously justify. Boeing's 787 program delivered 78 aircraft in 2023, its best delivery year since the production halt caused by quality issues in 2020. The order book looked stable, but the new order flow told a different story. For every 787 order placed in 2023 and 2024, there were 4 A321XLR orders placed by airlines running the same route economics. The 767 is the more direct casualty. Boeing suspended commercial production of the 767 for airline customers. It continues only as the military KC-46 tanker. The aircraft that dominated transatlantic flying through the 1990s and early 2000s is commercially extinct, in part because the market for its routes migrated to a narrowbody that didn't exist when the 767 was designed. By the way, if you are finding this analysis useful, subscribing takes 2 seconds. It helps the algorithm understand that this kind of research is worth putting in front of more people. Boeing has studied a middle-of-the-market aircraft, internally called the 797, since approximately 2012. The concept would carry 220 to 270 passengers on routes of 4,000 to 5,000 nautical miles, filling the gap between narrowbodies and widebodies. The A321XLR serves enough of the 797's intended market that Boeing has had to ask repeatedly whether a clean-sheet aircraft can still be justified. The internal answer appears to be no. No 797 launch announcement has been made. The program has been studied, presented to the board, and deferred repeatedly. What is happening with the A321XLR follows a pattern in aviation history that repeats with uncomfortable regularity. The Douglas DC-7 arrived as the finest piston aircraft ever built. Within 5 years, jets made the entire category irrelevant. Lockheed's L-1011 was technically superior to its competition and still drove Lockheed out of commercial aviation entirely, because the market redefined what good enough meant before the aircraft reached full production. Aircraft programs don't fail when the airplane is bad. They fail when the market redefines what good enough means. Widebody aircraft are not becoming obsolete. They are becoming specialized. The 777X, the A350, the 787-10. These aircraft carry 350 to 400 passengers across 8,000 to 9,000 nautical miles. That is a mission the A321XLR cannot perform and will never perform. Ultra-long-haul routes, high-density trunk routes, and premium cabin flagship operations require widebodies and will continue to require them. But the middle tier, 200 to 250 passengers across 3,000 to 5,000 nautical miles, the routes that once required 767s and early 787s, that market is now contested. It is a market the widebody manufacturers treated as their exclusive territory for 40 years. And the aircraft that contested it is a single-aisle jet that simply grew its range until widebody economics stopped making sense for those routes. There is a phrase in aviation systems analysis for when an aircraft designed for one mission gradually absorbs the missions intended for larger, more complex aircraft. Scope creep. The A321XLR is the most commercially successful example of scope creep in the history of commercial aviation. The question Boeing now faces is not whether the A321XLR is a threat. The question is whether the window to respond to it has already closed. A clean-sheet narrowbody or middle-of-the-market aircraft requires 10 to 12 years from launch decision to certification. Boeing has not launched one. Its engineering resources are currently allocated to fixing production quality on the 787 and 737 MAX, the aircraft that already exist, rather than designing the aircraft that would compete with what Airbus is delivering today. And airlines, which operate on 20 to 30-year fleet planning horizons, are placing their bets now. The 1,200 aircraft in the A321XLR backlog represent fleet decisions for the 2030s and 2040s, decisions that lock in maintenance contracts, pilot-type ratings, ground handling infrastructure, and route economics for a generation. The A321XLR will not replace wide-body aircraft entirely. It won't fly Sydney to London nonstop or carry 400 passengers across the Pacific. Those missions still require wide-bodies and always will. But the middle of the market, the routes that built the wide-body business case, no longer belongs exclusively to wide-bodies. It belongs to a narrow-body that kept growing until the economics tipped. The question is whether wide-body manufacturers, having been pushed out of that middle ground by a jet that wasn't supposed to reach it, are watching the same movie the Douglas Aircraft Company watched in 1958. The DC-7 was perfect. It just arrived at exactly the wrong moment. Whether the 797 arrives at all, and whether it arrives in time, depends entirely on decisions Boeing hasn't made yet. If this analysis was worth your time, hit like and subscribe. And drop in the comments what you think Boeing should do about the 797, because I haven't found a satisfying answer yet, and I suspect the people running Boeing haven't either.